Welcome to today's broadcast. My name is Colleen Patterson, and I'm the Director of Employer Services and Compliance at Savoy. I wanted to focus our time today on your questions, specifically regarding carrier allowances and changes in rules, as carriers are making these changes pretty quickly. To address these questions, I'm joined today by Wendy Ebner, who is a Vice President at Savoy. Wendy, what do brokers need to know about carrier allowances?
Hi, Colleen, and hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Colleen. And before I get into it, I just want to start with some gratitude for you, for my coworkers here at Savoy, and for all the brokers on the line. Colleen, I'm so grateful for what you and your team have been doing every single day, and the resources that you've been sharing with us to keep us armed with the solutions to help us solve problems that, quite frankly, I don't think any of us expected we'd ever have in our lifetime. Savoy is really working tirelessly to bring real-time content, and it is a full-time job. So I just want you to know that is not lost on me. Just in trying to prepare for this today, it was, to be frank, a really overwhelming task because I have so much to say, and I'm trying to do that all while fielding calls from all of you on the line with unique situations. So, in one way, it's a blessing and it's a noble duty, for sure. It reminds me, I don't know how many of you are on Facebook, but I keep seeing the same meme pop up, which is Mr. Rogers. And he says, when I was a young boy, I was afraid when I was afraid of something, my mother would tell me to look for the helpers. And I had never remembered that quote. I was a Mr. Rogers person when I was a kid, but, I have to say, we are the helpers, and maybe we did or didn't sign up for it, but it's who we are. I mean, we are the helpers right now in helping our clients, you being our client, and of course you in turn, your own clients, make decisions that are really, really hard to make. So we're happy to be partners. We're happy to be a pillar of strength during a storm that none of us really asked for. But what we really want to impart more than anything before I get into it is we're here for you. I'm here to pledge on behalf of all of Savoy that we want to help in our assistance in any way you need, whatever that may look like. And it may not be what you think. It could just be a place to vent, guidance. It could be compliance. But we've said it before. I'll say it again. It could be go-to meetings. It could be technology to help you do virtual open enrollments. It could be happy hour on Zoom. And I got to tell you, I've done a few of those this week. But please just reach out and ask. We're here for you. And that's what this is all about, really. So anyway, today I'm here just to emphasize what I keep hearing. And I'm going to kind of, sorry to say, focus a little bit on Jersey because I tend to get more calls in New Jersey of late. Horizon was one of the last to speak on their position, and that's partially why. But I want to start to just acknowledge that the reading that's coming your way, I realize it's a struggle. And if you don't already know, Colleen has created, her team is, actually it's a combination of folks. Kristen Nolan is also very involved, but there's this wonderful chart that we've created on COVID-19. And it is a spreadsheet that goes by carrier, by topic, and it really helps put everything in one place. It's updated nearly hourly. Today, I know Emblem and Empire were both updated under the furlough and under the exception columns. So take a look at that, because again, it's like by the hour. I'm going to talk about some things here on the call today that are not on the grid yet, because it's happening that fast. But for easy access to get to this grid, any Savoy employee that sends you an email, they in the signature have a new little signature thing. It's like an orange button that says learn more. If you click that button, it takes you to this landing page. That is the grid I'm speaking of. And if you're on this call right now, the invitation you received would have had that link as well. So make it your best friend. Anyway, so you know where to find it. So the categories on the grid are furlough. That's probably the biggest question I got last week. Grace period. That's probably the biggest question I got today. Downgrading off cycle. New business plan rules if you're changing carriers in the middle of this storm. Telehealth, of course. Some questions about prescriptions. So anyway, I'm going to start just by talking about the 5 things I learned today, Monday. I mean, it's just unreal. So the first is, this is kind of a lie. This came out late last week, but I really focused strongly on it today. Horizon is no longer going to require recertification for compliance purposes on any renewing groups April 1 through 7/1. So they're the first to speak on that I'm aware of. I'm sure there'll be more to follow, but no certification requirement on renewing groups. They're just deeming everything compliant, so that's great. The second thing I learned today was that Horizon is deeming blue card providers as eligible for telehealth purposes, so no cost share. So, if you're a New Jersey person and you were tapping into, Empire's network with Horizon's Blue Card, or maybe you were tapping into Independence Blue Cross, any of those providers that you would have used with your Blue Card benefit will be able to bill Horizon as an in-network, as long as you had Blue Card experience with no cost share for you. 3, this is late in the day. We learned that Horizon will accept credit cards beginning tomorrow at 3 p.m. You can use a credit card to pay your premium with the exception of no American Express. And that could be set up via their billing department. And there is an 800 number that I think is coming out on a quick flash this evening, or probably even as I'm speaking. So more to come there. That it's really the billing number that you would see on the bill. And the group themselves can just initiate that, which should help because, as these employers are waiting for funding to make payroll, maybe they can float their premium on a credit card and buy a little bit of time. So I'm very optimistic that other carriers will follow suit. Plus, nobody wants to touch paper all of a sudden, of course. So then number 4 that I learned today is that if you have a plan as a result of a furlough that ends up empty with Horizon, like let's say it's a pre-ACA plan, and maybe you put a furlough in place, but furlough might be a bad example. Let's say you have a involuntary, you terminate everybody, and they're going to have COBRA election rights, but maybe part of your population's furloughed. If inadvertently through terminating people, you end up with an empty subgroup, in the old world with Horizon, that would have gotten closed, and you wouldn't have been able to reopen that until your next open enrollment. And we heard today, now it's a verbal, and I will emphasize that because until it's in writing, I don't like to even mention it, but we did get a verbal that they don't plan to terminate empty subgroups during this storm, which is good. So that's something worth mentioning. And then finally, not related to Horizon, but just ledge related, I learned today that actually, I think it happened on Friday, but I read it today fully and understood it, that there is new law that just passed that will cover women's menstrual products under 213D expenses. I don't know that that has anything to do with COVID-19, but it is new information so that your FSA, your HSA, of course, HRA, but a 213D expense would now be women's sanitary products, which was never part of 213D. So that's a good thing. So anyway, all of the above, if it's in writing, is going to end up on this chart. If it's not in writing, we're going to, drill to get it in writing and then put it on that chart. But the themes, as we said, they're not really a surprise to anybody, I'm sure, on the call. And there's really no need to memorize anything I'm saying because it's such a moving target. So I want to talk about furlough in New Jersey specifically. I did mention earlier that Empire and Emblem in New York updated today, and those were both under furlough. But I'm going to speak specific to New Jersey. It's interesting. I can pretty much confidently say at this point that pretty much all the carriers have agreed to do some form of furlough, which is awesome because I'm sure you may have heard on Colleen's prior web series this week that furlough, allows you to avoid an offer of COBRA. And so long as the employer continues to pay that bill, those folks are still considered active at work, even if they're lessened in hours or not working at all for a short term. Okay. And I'm not going to belabor the difference between termination and furlough. You can refer back to one of Colleen's priors or just give a call to your account exec. But suffice to say, all are doing it. Now, they vary. We've got Ebner saying they'll do it till July. We've got AmeriHealth saying they'll do it till June 30th. We've got Cigna saying they'll do it to May 31, but only with a written request. We have Horizon saying they'll do it for 60 days, but they'll look at it again later. So the point is every carrier is different, and the answer's becoming a little bit more generous each day. I think Cigna's the only one that wants it in writing, a written request. But it is important to have a plan document behind it for your own files, especially if you're subject to player pay, because you want to be able to ensure that you're operating without any chance that someone could say it was a discriminatory policy. Not that we think anybody is looking to do anything like that at this time, but it's still advised. But anyway, so the good news is everyone's doing some version of it. Certain carriers have addressed the rehire factor. What happens if you terminate someone and now you rehire them? Are you going to have to resatisfy wait period? Right now, we know Aetna is going to waive a need to have to resatisfy, and I believe Horizon has also said that. Please check the grid on that one. I'm almost 100% sure. We had some questions today that we're waiting some answers on as it pertains to these things. And again, every hour this thing is being updated, so please just take a look. So the next thing is the grace period, and this was probably the number one call I got today because premiums are due. Aetna and Oxford and obviously United Healthcare Oxford, they have all said formally that they will give grace additional to their normal grace period upon request. So you have to call the billing department and ask for that. Horizon and AmeriHealth have not made any accommodations yet. It did have success on a one-off with a carrier who I won't mention, but I'd rather not mention, but it's not either of the blues. And they did give, a couple of weeks, and it was a one-off. So I would say if a group is really in a pinch and they really, truly don't want to terminate, give a call to your Savoy team, and, we can do our best. And frankly, the groups can do pretty good work too. I mean, if they call the billing department themselves, sometimes we're finding that carriers are working one-off with group leaders. Downgrade rules. So let's say you want to keep your plan afloat, but you want to downgrade the benefit because it's a rich plan and you feel you've been better off with a less expensive plan. Right now, I can say with confidence that Aetna is allowing downgrades. We have not heard of any other carrier allowing off-cycle downgrades at this time. I think that all of them would entertain it, but nobody has formally announced it as a strategy besides Aetna at this point. For new business, we're finding all the carriers are being asked questions about, will you take paperwork late? Because everybody's scrambling, right? I know for a fact that certain carriers have stated extensions to new business paperwork. Horizon and Aetna are one. Again, check the grid. I had success today with AmeriHealth taking a group that has some furloughed employees that are going to be in the new business paperwork, and I had to get some guidance on how to list those on the cert. And so now this has opened our eyes to the fact that we need to build this very question on this grid and give you formal instruction by carrier on what to do if you're moving new business and you've got furloughed people that want to apply. It's interesting, what I heard from AmeriHealth today is pretty much go ahead and put them down as full-time, and we're going to accept that they're furloughed because that's the offer that we have out there. Meanwhile, we've heard from other carriers, we're not interested in new business with furlough in it at all. So again, these are questions you need to ask us if you don't see it on the grid, and check the grid because every single day these rules are changing. And then the final thing I'll talk about is just the prescription drug section of the grid. It's a topic that keeps coming up. Most carriers at this point have allowed or are considering it, and if they change their position, you'll see it on the grid. They've allowed for early refill on maintenance drugs. I can't tell you how helpful that is as a broker to share with a customer. I mean, my parents are elderly and they are in the boat where my dad doesn't want to step foot into a pharmacy right now, and he couldn't get his refill on his drug because he wasn't eligible for it. And his carrier was one of the ones that loosened this rule. So he was able to get, some of the prescriptions he needs stockpiled when normally that would not have been allowed. So, the sooner you can get your pharmacy situation out of the way, the better. So that is pretty much it. Those are the biggies that I gleaned from the chart. I just wanted to remind everyone that it exists. I want to remind everyone how grateful we are and how I am personally to work with all of you. And please don't hesitate to ask for whatever it is you need outside of the box. And with that, everyone, please stay safe. And I'm going to turn it back over to Colleen for some of her updates. Thank you, Colleen.
Thanks, Wendy. So a couple of updates on the regulatory side of things. So today, the Department of Labor released additional FAQs regarding the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Now, that was the second of 3 pieces of legislation that Congress had passed. So definitely make sure you check that update out on our website. We will be posting the link to those FAQs. They went from, I think originally they were about 20 or 21 questions. They're now up to about 58 that the Department of Labor has released. So definitely pay attention to that. Also, on Friday, with the piece of legislation that Congress passed, the CARES Act, Wendy's been talking about a couple of those items today. There is a lot of information in there to digest. So what we're going to be doing is just featuring pieces of it that we think are most important for you to pay attention to. And one of those items Wendy had talked about today, which was the prescription component of it. She also mentioned about the Section 213D expenses being expanded to include menstrual products for women. That was a result of the legislation that passed on Friday. So we will be releasing additional information on that as well. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to your dedicated Savoy team and continue to use the resources section of our website. That's the COVID-19 section that you can find at savoyassociates.com. From all of us here at Savoy, stay healthy and safe. Thank you for joining us today.